Good morning to the commissioners, to the staff, the North Carolina National and Cultural Department, and I certainly hope welcome to the general public who are joining us today for the June meeting, quarterly meeting of the North Carolina Historical Commission. My name is David Ruffin, the chair, and I'd like to begin, as we always do. The agenda has been published, and I want to ask if there are any aspects of conflicts of interest by the commissioners whereby they feel that they would not be able to participate or to vote on items embedded in the agenda. Do I hear any concerns relative to conflicts of interest? Hearing none, let's maybe call the roll just to make sure we've established a quorum, which I feel sure we do. Mr. Clark?
Here.
Ms. Condell? Dr.
Here.
Denard? Dr. Denard?
Here.
Mr. Dixon?
Here.
Ms. Groom?
Here.
Dr. Johnson?
Present.
Dr. Lee? Ms. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Reynolds?
Present.
Ms. Snowden?
Present.
David Ruffin, present. I'm going to take the prerogative to change the agendas to some degree, because I think certainly a forefront of our concern and being aware is, of course, we lost a emeritus member of the commission and former chair, Millie Barber, who passed away in Hickory in May last month.
Wow.
She was a native, I believe, of Surry County. She clearly had a number of roles, frankly, not unlike Commissioner Snowden and Commissioner Groom, perhaps even Commissioner Reynolds. She began her history, so-called career as a teacher. And I would like to just certainly say for the record how much we miss her and how much, and I would like, frankly, to open up a potential motion for crafting a resolution in remembrance and appreciation for her service. And I frankly would like to maybe, I don't know if Dr. Bryan, who is also an emeritus member of our commission, if she is here or not, but I have a feeling that Commissioner Snowden and Commissioner Emeritus Bryan would have had more active recollection of working with Millie Barbie. But anyway, I just felt like that it was appropriate to begin this meeting with a strong, realization of appreciation to her prior service.
I think that is a very good idea. And so I would like to make the motion that we have a resolution honoring Millie for all of her work. And the funny thing about it is she worked both on the coast and in the mountains. So she spread across the whole state. And not very many of us can say that we had made a difference in all over the state, but Millie did.
I'll second that motion. Absolutely.
I hear a motion from Commissioner Snowden and seconded by Commissioner Johnson. And I would ask if you'd be so kind, Barbara, to maybe craft a resolution that we would be able to look at next meeting, if that would.
I would be glad to.
And particularly as it relates to maybe directing that ensuring that we can direct that to some family members that would be even more meaningful to.
Okay. I will have it ready for you by our next meeting.
Technically it was, I think, Commissioner Bryan that was at least temporary chair when Commissioner Reynolds and I were sworn, but prior to that, I think she'd been chair. So her legacy to me was the Confederate memorials. So almost day one, we dealt with that, but it was in retrospect a little bit humorous, I guess. But anyway, I certainly heard nothing, even though I didn't have the honor and pleasure to serve with her on this commission. I certainly heard nothing but great things. So, okay, so the next order of the agenda would be the approval of the minutes from our March 20th, 2024 meeting. Those have been posted. Hopefully you've read them, and I open the floor for any discussion or corrections or edifications of those.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes.
Did we need to vote on that motion that we just?
Oh, I beg your pardon. You're right. Certainly a seasoned gentleman like a mayor, I would catch that Robert's Rules of Order snafu. Sorry about that. The vote on the resolution honoring former chair and member of the commission, Millie Barbary, proposed by Commissioner Snowden, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. And unfortunately, given the fact that we're, in a virtual environment, we'll have to have roll calls. So all in favor of that, just indicate by aye. Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. Condell.
Aye.
Dr. Denard.
Aye.
Mr. Dixon.
Aye.
Ms. Groom. You're muted, Barbara.
Aye.
Okay. Dr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Snowden.
Aye.
David Ruffin, aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, could I ask one question? Did I hear that Commissioner Snowden, you'll come up with some wording for that resolution?
Sir.
Okay,
I will run it by your office before. we
Okay.
bring it.
that's great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, excuse the technical error there, and let's then move on to the approval of the Historical Commission minutes from the March 20th of this year meeting. Hopefully you've been able to read those that were posted. Do I hear any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Dr. Denard has moved to approval. Do I hear a second?
Susan Phillips, I second.
Ms. Phillips has seconded. Any further discussion? If not, we will move to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. Condell.
Aye.
Dr. Denard.
Aye.
Mr. Dixon.
Aye.
Ms. Groom.
Aye.
Dr. Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Lee. Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Snowden.
Aye.
And David Ruffin, aye. Okay, at this point, then I'm going to ask that Dr. Waters lead us through the traditional part of our agenda, which is to look at and consider accessions and deaccessions from our museums and historic sites.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to do that. And let me just add one note. Thank Parker for putting together those minutes. That's no easy feat. And Parker and I read carefully this time because we knew if anyone was going to catch anything, it was Dr. Denard. So Dr. Denard. Yeah.
Well, I must admit, a point of humor here, that I breathed a sigh of relief when I heard Dr. Denard immediately step up and say, for the exact same reason. I must confess something that did happen, though, reading the minutes, and it hit me like a ton of bricks that I had been the one to suggest that all the commissioners participate in the survey coming from Ramona and Bartos, and I realized that didn't recall getting the survey through a link. Parker had sent it, and I'd missed it. Shame on me. But I scrambled to to finish the survey yesterday, but I got those from the minutes. I realized. But anyway, but we corrected that hopefully. But anyway, so
Well, thank you.
go
So,
ahead, Dr. Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have before us the sessions and sessions. The Internal Committee Acquisitions Committee met on the 22nd and approved these to bring forward to you all for consideration. We have proposed the sessions for the North Carolina Museum of History, proposed the sessions for the North Carolina Museum of the Albemarle, and for the North Carolina Maritime Museums. And Mr. Chair, we can take those all in one slate. I want to recognize that John Campbell is here as well in the event that there are any questions on this. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair, for any comments or commentary on these proposed sessions for our museums, for the museum division.
Well, I was particularly intrigued by the 1908 ballot and tally and the reason that it was very personal to me was that as an 11-year-old youth in a Hoskie, I was standing in line giving cards. I couldn't vote, of course, but I was giving cards. I'll go ahead and say it, for Terry Sanford in the 1960 primary against Beverly Lake and Sewell and Larkins, who were running in the Democratic primary. But the reason I remember that so well is that I had a magistrate of the town, and also was chair of the elections, that was supporting Dr. Lake. Well, Dr. Lake, and it's just the reality, was known as a segregationist at that point, but it conjures up everything that was said about that accession, because it was talking about Jim Crow, and you could argue that lasted, even into the mid-century. And I also remember very well, because we didn't have voting machines, and I remember the tallies, literally the tick marks being done on election night. And so that really did have a personal kind of throwback to me, and it was just really delightful to see that being acquired or being assessed. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Mr. Chair, from the last meeting, I tried to get the committee to let me take the drum set that we accessioned into the collection. And I told them this time around, I don't wear colorful jackets, but my father does. So the one of Fig Jones, I tried to get that one. They're on display right now in the at the museum. So two pieces that I've tried to take home with me.
Well, it is a tedious job, I'm sure, to describe this as well, not the least of which to process these items. But I want the staff to know that it's extremely meaningful and enjoyable to me to read a lot of the background of why these are meaningful and the reason and rationale for proposing them. So
they do a very good job. And I see Commissioner Condell looking carefully through the list. I would expect nothing less, Shana. So any other comments? Dr. Johnson?
Yes, if we see some things that may need a little adjustment, or we'd like to have staff consider some additional information, how would you like that best? I have one minor teeny tiny correction, but it said at that same ballot that you were looking at, underneath it says it has ballet instead of ballot.
Okay. We can
That's a minor thing.
That.
Yeah, but the other thing is, would you like us to just speak it out loud? I had a comment about Jenny Warburg.
Yeah, I think that's fine, Dr. Johnson. You can go ahead. So it will be in the minutes and we can do that. John is on the call. John, do you have any comment that you'd like to respond to there?
Sure, and I can correct that. I apologize for the ballet. Yeah, You can see there's a whole lot of text in this, and it comes together over 3 or 4 different meetings. And so, yeah, I do apologize for any typos, and we'll definitely fix that, especially when it gets to Proficio and going, dissemination to the public.
Yes, and I do appreciate the work of the staff, and it's just I think my eye just can't help it when it sees
Sure.
something and it just boom. The comment I had about the listing of the relevance of Jenny Warburg's work, and then listed several national magazines, I would include Ms. Magazine on that list. And I say that because she did some really seminal work with Ms. Magazine that has great impact, and I know that is a part of her portfolio. And I've seen her in action and had conversations with her, so I do know, and have been in meetings with her at Ms. Magazine. So I think that that is something that should be added to that list.
We'll see to that. Thank you. John, go ahead.
Sure will. Sure. Can you tell me exactly which page you're referring to, though? Because I want to make sure I get
Yes.
that right.
It's page 8 when I pull it up. So it's in the Carol Anderson, really, it was amazing the things that she was able to donate, and it's in that part of her donation. And when I downloaded, it's page 8.
Where it says her work has been featured in numerous national publications. Okay, and you're
there.
advocating also for Ms. Magazine.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right, sure, we can do that. Thank you for catching that.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments or concerns of any of the items? As I believe Dr. Waters was, at this point, we're really opening it up to all the North Carolina Museum of History, the North Carolina Museum of Albemarle, the North Carolina Maritime Museums, and the North Carolina Historic Sites, right, in terms of
just the museums in this slate, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay.
We'll take the historic sites separately. If
Okay.
That's
okay. The three museums then, right?
This is Susan Phillips, and I move that we approve the accessions to the museums.
Commissioner Phillips has moved approval of the accessions of the 3 museums. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Who? Dr. Denard has seconded. Okay. Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Kondo?
Aye.
Dr. Denard?
Aye.
Mr. Dixon? Ms. Groom?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Presume Dr. Lee's not with us today.
She
Ms.
is.
Phillips. Oh, is she? Oh,
yes.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome. Dr. Lee.
Yes. For some reason, we can't hear you, Dr. Lee. I think we heard you then.
Yeah. If you don't mind, just raise your, yeah, we're still not hearing you. Raise your hand if it's an aye. Can you hear, Dr. Lee, can you hear? Oh, great. She's voting more than one time. Okay, Ms. Phillips, excuse me.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Snowden.
Aye.
And David Ruffin, aye. So the proposed accessions to the 3 museums, the Museum of History, the Museum of the Albemarle, the Museum of Maritime Museums have been adopted.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we now have before us the proposed accessions to the North Carolina State Historic Sites. Michelle is on the call as well, so I will look to her to help with any questions that you all might have around these proposed accessions to state historic sites. The internal committee met and approved these for your consideration.
Well, just like y'all are trying, Dr. Waters, you wanted the coat, the drum set. I'll
Okay.
take the sofa.
Okay, all right.
Just saying.
So Michelle, you heard that, right?
I have, and Dr. Johnson, there are many Thomas Day items out in the world. I mean, his workshop was very prolific if you find yourself becoming a collector one day. As you can see with this particular proposed accession, we noted the reason we're interested is it's not redundant to the other sofas. But if there are some that are redundant out there, hint, hint.
Any other comments or thoughts on the proposed accessions to the North Carolina State Historic Sites?
If not, Mr. Chair, I'll ask for your consideration for a motion for
Yes.
these.
Do I hear a motion?
This is
I
Susan.
move to accept staff's recommendation.
I think Commissioner Phillips quite a second ahead, but I presume Dr. Denard is a second okay with you?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, all in favor. Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. Condell,
Aye.
Dr. Denard,
Aye.
Mr. Dixon,
Aye.
Ms. Groom,
Aye.
Dr. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Are you able to hear me or no?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Welcome. Welcome. I'm glad that you have joined us. Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, excuse me. You're muted, Noah.
I said aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm having technical problems today. I'm the one that seems to be technically messing up here. Ms. Snowden
Aye.
and David Ruffin, aye.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Waters, then if you could move on to the proposed deaccessions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You have before you the proposed deaccessions from the North Carolina Museum of History. The internal committee met, approved these for your consideration, so we'll entertain any questions that you might have. John is on the call and will help with any questions that you might have.
I don't have any questions, but just a comment that this looks like a lot of work.
Okay.
So, especially the quilt collection, I imagine that took quite a bit of time to cull through those. And yeah, I think I always am interested to see what the recommendations are for disposal. And I think they're very intentional and thoughtful. So I appreciate that.
And I very well recall, Commissioner Condell, your rather astute comments last meeting about that whole process and, you know, helping, frankly, reassure staff that we do follow their recommendations and that these, and particularly a deaccession it maybe even has to some degree even more of a need to understand why, right? Particularly if it's not just a matter of deterioration or something of that nature. So do appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. The quilt collection specifically is some of those are stunning. And so like, you know, but it does make sense. Absolutely. You always have to make those decisions about what takes space, you know, space is money.
That's right. That's exactly.
Thank you, Commissioner Condell. John, do you want to comment?
Well, no, I appreciate your kind comments. And what's really interesting to us too is, you know, when we put together this proposal, we also look through a lot of the other quilts we have in the collection because we have hundreds of other examples. So that was one of my fears, is that you would think we were getting rid of the entire quilt collection. This is just a tip of the iceberg. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you, John.
And this is Susan Phillips. I think the one thing that we also I appreciate is that those are going to be available to the public at auction, and I would like to go. I mean, I agree, they're absolutely beautiful, but as opposed to just hoarding things, sometimes it's appropriate for us to let the public see and maybe buy some of this beautiful work.
And I'd like to say the curators, especially those who've been working with the quilt collection, are amazing in the depth of their knowledge. I mean, that's part of what you're seeing when this culling happens, is that they know what they know. And I just so appreciate the curatorial staff at the museum. They're great.
Thank you so much. Oh, let me pass this along. They'll be happy to hear that.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
So this is Susan Phillips, and I move that we approve the deaccessions.
The
second.
Who was the second, please?
Barbara
Oh,
Broom.
Okay, Commissioner Groom.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips has moved, Commissioner Groom has seconded that we accept the deaccessions for both the North Carolina Museum of History, and then does this include both the North Carolina Historic Sites as well?
No, just the Museum of History.
Just the North Carolina Museum of History. I'm sorry. All in favor. Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. Condo,
Aye.
Dr. Denard,
Aye.
Mr. Dixon,
Aye.
Ms. Groom,
Aye.
Dr. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Snowden,
Aye.
David Ruffin, aye. All
Thank you,
right,
Mr. Chair.
move on to the North Carolina Historic Sites.
Next are the proposed deaccessions for North Carolina Historic Sites. Michelle is on the call. The internal committee approved these for your consideration. Michelle, if you have anything you'd like to add, please feel free to do that.
I will just add that you'll notice several items that relate to Historic Halifax. We have been really grateful that there's been funding to allow for some updates to that site, particularly as we approach the America 250 and the significance of that site to that commemoration. And so as we are preparing for the updates to the structure of the visitor center and the permanent exhibit, some important culling has happened, or recommended culling. One of the things I'll draw your attention to that I think is important is that you'll notice that we are recommending that many of these items go into our teaching collection, which will allow them to be used in a different way. So we're just really transferring, or recommending that we transfer these objects into a different purpose.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Do I hear any further comments or discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I move approval.
Dr. Denard has moved that we accept the proposed deaccessions of the North Carolina Historic Sites. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Clark
Second.
has seconded, yes. All in favor, Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. Condo,
Aye.
Dr. Denard,
Aye.
Mr. Dixon,
Aye.
Ms. Groom,
Aye.
Dr. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Snowden,
Aye.
David Ruffin, aye.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
that is
Chair.
approved as well.
Mhm.
Next on the agenda is recently President Biden issued an executive order recognizing and honoring women's history. And I'd like for the for this a discussion of this particular item to recognize our familiar Sarah Kuntz, who's state archivist, to give us some perspective on that. And Sarah, good to see you as always.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give an update on a meeting that we recently had in the department, and there are a couple folks on this call, including Dr. Waters and Christy Norris, who are also there. So I would ask them to chime in if they want to add anything to my brief overview here and kind of the requests of the commission. This is kind of an informal request. If you had the opportunity to look at that executive order, you can see that President Biden is asking the National Park Service to undertake a couple of important things related to elevating and expanding women's history stories that are told across the country. So a couple of key points. He's asking for an assessment of existing locations that are National Historic Landmarks and historic sites that to make sure that if there are connected stories to women's history, that they are being properly told or expanded at those existing locations. He's also asking for identification of opportunities to tell new stories or expand stories. And that will also include conducting some additional studies through the National Park Service related to those topics. So we had a meeting within the department led by Secretary Wilson, because he sits on an advisory committee to the National Park Service. And so he is in the process of meeting with that advisory committee and wanted to talk about this very executive order and how, as an advisory board member, we can adequately in North Carolina connect to other states and make sure that we are providing a lot of good information on North Carolina specific stories that we feel like connect to the national stories. So he asked of us, those of us that were there, that we think about up to 10 suggestions for things that could be augmented related to women's history at existing North Carolina National Historic Landmarks. So what might be connected to a space that's already a landmark that could use some amplification related to women's history. And he also asked us for several suggestions on any possible new historic landmarks that we would recommend in North Carolina. And in the course of this conversation, those of us in the meeting felt like it might be appropriate for the Historical Commission to weigh in. You all are involved in history in North Carolina in a variety of different ways and time periods and things like that. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity for you to kind of, provide some input if you wanted to. So that was the genesis of getting this on the agenda, was to make sure that we had a good sort of landscape assessment ourselves of what people felt like were important, overlooked stories, or things that could really use some more prominence. Did that capture that, Dr. Waters? Anything
Yes, Sarah, you did.
add?
You captured
Okay.
it. And if Christy wants to add anything, she certainly can. But Sarah, thank you so much. And it was not lost on us as we discussed this too, that this really does relate to the resolutions that you all passed on the teaching of history. And so we did think it was appropriate to share this with you all. And Barbara Snowden, your name came up a lot because we knew that if anyone was going to have anything to add to this, it was going to be you.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm so.
Thank you, Sarah.
And I just put in the chat, I forgot to say this, a link to the list of existing National Historic theme studies that have been conducted. So that might be useful to you too, because that's part of the executive orders to say what's already been studied, but maybe women's history was somewhat overlooked in that. And a couple of the places we talked about that included civil rights history, that there might have been more that could be done about women's stories within civil rights studies or Reconstruction theme studies that have already been conducted. So you may want to have the opportunity to look at some of those and see if they were a little light on women's history.
And if you all do have any ideas and things that you would like to suggest, by all means, please send those. You can send those to me or Sarah, and we'll sort through that and make sure they get added to the list.
That was my question. So thank you.
A quick question.
Dr.
With
Denard.
regard to these executive orders, is this something that has that's been done on a regular basis? And if so, do we have a list of all of these executive orders in our file?
Yeah, Dr. Denard, that's a good question. Since my time in the department, this is the first time I've known that we've had this. Sarah, you might be able to speak better to that.
Yeah, I can't think of another one similar to this. I don't know if Michelle or Ramona have memory of another executive order similar to this. I think this is the first one I've seen in the last decade, maybe.
And Dr. Denard, I would also like to say, Secretary Wilson is not on the call, but just say this says a lot about the intention that he's given to this and the attention that he's giving to this. So it's really, I would say, a reflection on his leadership.
Okay.
One thing I would like to suggest is I know that the museums did during the Year of the Woman, a lot of the museums did a local list and did an exhibit of that. I know that the Museum of the Albemarle did, and I know the Museum of History in Raleigh did. And so we need to call those lists and make sure that that we look at those.
Is there a sense from the staff that there would be, and first of all, let me compliment the fact that this was put on the agenda, because I think it certainly does just supplement further our general consensus on this commission to do everything in our power to advance the teaching and awareness of history. It's been a recurring theme, as you know, for almost now 2 years on this commission, to do anything we can to emphasize that. This certainly is in no way not supportive of that, I think, to even have the discussion. So beyond the discussion, is there a sense from the staff, Sarah, that a motion or a resolution of any kind that would be thought appropriate from the commission, or is this just designed to be another discussion point?
I think our thought was more a discussion, like if there were specifics such as look at this list or check out this story, or if you think about something afterwards, to be in touch with Dr. Waters to make sure that we were comprehensive in our survey of
right
topic.
And Sarah, can you remind, is there a timeline on this?
I think it's fairly short. He's meeting like right around now. So in the next, say, month or a couple weeks, we need feedback if you have it.
Okay, great. Because if you go back to the survey, it's just another reminder of how multidimensional history and every aspect of it is. And again, this is, while all groups are represented and should be represented for their unique contributions to history, women, of course, have their role in that. So it is heartening to see. And I think we all have, as I said again, this commission, the thing I'm frankly the most proud of is and Noah's leadership on the committee we'll talk about in a moment, is that the initiatives that we can do, the things we can do to create even more profile of history and its teaching and societal awareness of it, and why it's so important to, frankly, the future of our country, there's no wasted moment on that, in my opinion.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, for you all's consideration. Any ideas you have, you can send those again to me, and we'll get them into the right hands.
Great.
May I make one observation regarding this executive order? I was struck by the fact that it paid attention to women and girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we have, observation of Women's History Month, and children have been involved in a lot of our social movements, We don't have a month or anything of sort to recognize children, And I know when we do a Black History Month, we don't say men, women, boys, and girls, and all of that. We just say, the movers and shakers of Black history. So here, there's an effort here to separate out from children generally and say women and girls. See, And that's it's a kind of a delicate way of splitting hairs when you talk about, the role of these children involved in the social movements. We've had protest activities and all of that, Yeah. So, it's worth thinking about, I think, is to say how we deal with children generally, and then separate out, from the larger group of children, and say, when we're talking about women's history, women and girls,
Right. Well, Dr. Denard, I totally agree with you, because that, again, I think has been discussed a bit in our previous discussions about the importance of linking children to the awareness and enjoyment of history, because that's so, and why we have concern about where the prioritization of history and civics and things like that are in the curriculum of our schools, and all of that. So I completely agree. There's a linkage there. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for that. And again, we appreciate very much you bringing that to our attention and further awareness. At this point, I'd like to recognize Ramona Bartos, the Director of Historical Resources for North Carolina. And she's got some, I think, good news on several fronts relative to the sub-grant funding of some hurricane recovery.
Thank you, Chair Ruffin. It's great to see everyone, and I appreciate your continual engagement with our division. And the program that I'm going to speak about has been, frankly, a landmark in every way program for our division. And I think for North Carolina, it's probably one of the largest amounts of money that we've ever been provided to do historic preservation bricks and mortar work in North Carolina. And first off, where I give you the background on this, I'd like to introduce and acknowledge the attendance of our team here, starting with Dan Becker, who is our program manager, grants coordinator for this program. Annette Stone is his capable second. And we also have Robin Walton, who is our preservation architect, who's been working with constituents. And then Jeff Adolphson has been working in the preservation office throughout all of this, is not necessarily with the program, but most of these projects are in his service territory. He's a restoration specialist with the Restoration Services branch. So they are here as our dream team brain trust here for any questions you might have. But I do want to just give you a little bit of background. A number of you were on the commission at the time that we originally got this influx of money. It's a congressional appropriation of $17 million. Approximately a little over half of that was given over to constituent subgrants. And this again was to address damage from hurricanes Florence, which was most of it was, but also Michael. And I think Dr. Waters himself was on the commission, but in a role as commission member, not in his current role. So some of you may recall a meeting we had in 2020. Others, I think Dr. Lee amongst them, and Mayor Clark and Ms. Condell might not have, this might be a little bit of new information for you. So just the backstory on this is we had your role in all of this was to help us vet these and give approval for the State Historic Preservation Officer, who was Kevin Cherry at that time, to move forward with staff recommendations for these subgrants. And we're pleased to say that a number of our subgrants and also internal state-owned projects have been working out really well, but others, though, have hit some issues, largely having to do with inflationary constraints that we've all been experiencing. So there have been a number of not too many, but a few projects that have fallen by the wayside, and there have been withdrawals from the program. And so that then leaves us with dollars that we would like to make adjustments for and reallocate to projects that have continued to move forward. And so all of those are outlined in the memo. And we also have a table that gives you the most granular information. But we would ask kindly for your approval for the following recommendations from staff. One is approval to adjust these grant award funds and administrative line items through reallocation of the appropriate funds as outlined in the table, the Excel spreadsheet table you see in the memo. So that's the first recommendation we'd ask for approval on. The second is to waive the original grant program requirement for a 20% match on part of subgrantees for grant funds exceeding $750,000. And the third is the authority for the hurricane grant manager, in keeping with what the National Park Service is allowing for line items to be moved around in consultation with me as division director, to make budget revisions of up to 10% of these reallocations, so we can move between, because again, these are our best thoughts about what it will be moving forward, of up to 10% of those total subgrant budget amounts between the subgrant allocations without having to come back to you, because you're only meeting quarterly, and we don't want to have our constituents have to stop and wait on your next quarterly meeting before we move forward. So that is our request today, and we'd be very glad to entertain any questions from you.
And Mr. Chair, let me just echo Ramona's words and to thank her too. I mean, the meticulous way that they approach this work is deeply appreciated. She referred to them as the dream team. They really are. And so really appreciate all of the work that the whole team does to get these in front of you and to keep these projects moving. Thank you, Ramona.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Ramona. And just to put clarity in the agenda and the process we're going through on this, if you can focus on page 7 of
Yes.
her report, that's basically action items that she is asking the commission, as I understand it, Ramona, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir. And again, the role of the commission is to give guidance to the State Historic Preservation Officer, who is Dr. Waters, and then us working for him. And again, this comes under your 121 responsibilities.
So is there any distinct need in your mind to break these 3 action items apart, or would there be any objection to treat them in a collective fashion?
I think we'd be fine if you wanted to treat them as a slate of recommendations and make one motion.
Well, before we get to that, are there any other questions or items that you'd like to discuss relative to this? Good. Do I hear any motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the action items.
These are under page 7 of the report that Ramona just presented to us, and it's under the bolded area called staff offers the following recommendations. So Commissioner Groom has moved acceptance and approval of those items. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner
Valerie, Dr. Johnson here.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson has approved a second. All in favor then, Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. Condell.
Aye.
Dr. Denard.
Aye.
Mr. Dixon. He may be off in the court. Ms. Groom.
Aye.
Dr. Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Snowden.
Aye.
And David Ruffin, aye. Again, thank you so much, Ramona. And before we leave your segment, I think we'd be remiss not to both congratulate and recognize another guest, I believe, in your area of expertise, Chris Southerly, who has just very recently, I think, been named no longer acting state archaeologist. I almost said archivist, but archaeologist. And I just wanted to certainly thank him for all of his incredibly great work. Thank you for joining us today. And again, congratulations on your new appointment.
And you see, and we see how hard he's working. Right. Okay.
I just said yes. Yeah, I'm actually out. I have some of our underwater crew right now. We're out on the Albemarle Sound and the beginning stages of actually something that Ramona was speaking of, part of the Emergency Supplemental Historic Preservation Fund, the Shorescape Survey, some of the archaeological side of things. Our crew's out this week doing ground truthing and inspection of some of the targets that were identified with the remote sensing and the initial archaeology. But thank you very much to the commission, and I'm happy to be in the position, and I see many faces that I know, and some new ones, and look forward to working with the commission as things move forward.
Well, it's not at all surprising to me to see you, as they say, in work mode, because for those the public perhaps don't realize, this gentleman's a expert diver, and I remember the most iconic picture of you is beside the cannon. I think it was it Queen Anne's Revenge that
I guess probably one from one of the projects there. Yes.
Yeah, and so I mean, this is a special. I mean, we love the staff, and we say at every meeting how much we respect and value the incredible work of the staff. But this is a little bit of a new wrinkle to see someone out there actually on the Albemarle. Maybe you can retrieve the fishing pole I lost probably 40 years ago.
I guess yeah, we saw quite a few jumping this morning as we were coming out, and we're remarking we brought the wrong kind of poles in pro.
Oh, congratulations, Chris. I am just delighted that you're in
Thanks,
this new role.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and happy to be continuing to work with you.
Right.
And Chair Ruffin, if I can amplify the praise for Chris, he has started as of last Monday. We have a lot of various topics going on that have required his close attention and expertise. And next year, I think, will be his 25th anniversary with the department. So we're really thrilled to be able to promote someone who has dedicated so much of his professional life to our state service. So, and also, far be it for anyone to say that we as history professionals are not fully engaged with modernity, because we are all speaking on Zoom from in Chris's place from a moving vessel in the middle of a large body of water. So we're always looking to the future.
That's the good part about virtual communication. You're right.
It is. And Chris, thanks again for finding a way to join us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Glad to do it. I'm glad that the cell towers were close enough to provide a good signal.
Yeah, it's been great. All right. Well, we will then move to another item, which is, of course, dear to my heart, is the update on the North Carolina Historical Commission Committee on Teaching of History and its resolutions. And I'll respectfully hand it over to the chair, Commissioner Noah Reynolds, who will update us on his committee and what the plans going forward are on that.
Thank you, Chair Ruffin. I apologize to the committee members for the slow start, but we wanted to have our first meeting in person in Raleigh. We have two staff from the department that we wanted to have attend the meeting. One is General Counsel to review the statutes and charter for the actual historical commission, so that we're sure about our charter and mission before we begin our work. So we wanted to do that in Raleigh, make that convenient for staff. Also, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Waters if he wanted to provide an introduction, but Christy Norris is the new Director of Education, and she wanted to attend the first committee meeting as well, so that she could start on the ground floor. So if you wanted to say anything, Dr. Waters, about Ms. Norris.
Commissioner Reynolds, thank you so much, and thank you for that update. And I'm so glad to have Christy join us today. Christy Norris, she's right across, well, she's not in our office across the hall from me. I think she's working remotely today. But, I'll say the department, it was the department's gain. We have had a partnership with Carolina Public Humanities for a long time, even prior to me coming into the department. Sarah has worked really closely with Carolina Public Humanities. And Christy, you'll have to remind me, but one of my former professors, has been leading that effort. Dr. Lloyd Kramer, who just retired as well, but we decided to steal Christy from him before he left. He's been giving me a hard time about that, but he did say that it was the department's gain. And so you know that Secretary Wilson is prioritizing education, and learning happens here in the department. And so it was really a boon for the department that they were able to bring Christy in. And so, Christy, I'm just going to turn it over to you to allow you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your work. But she will also meet with the committee, that special committee chaired by Commissioner Reynolds, to go more in depth in what we're doing across the department. But Christy, by all means, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a hard act to follow when you have somebody out in the field on a ship. I'm just saying, you have set me up a little bit, but I just have a few images. If it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. Is that all right? Only if I just show you guys like 20 slides here, is that? Let me see if I can get this. Can you guys see that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And let me get into actually presentation mode. So it's such a treat to be with you guys. And I'll just take maybe 5 minutes here to just introduce myself and talk a little bit about what I've got going on. I think I'm now officially 7 weeks into this new job. So I've been joking that it's like a log flume ride where it's very exciting and exhilarating. And also I'm getting doused, but I'm here for all of it. But I appreciate Dr. Waters inviting me. I've heard such great things about the work that you all are doing, and I'm so excited. I've just, even with Chair Ruffin and Dr. Denard, some of the comments you've already made, I can tell that you all are education lovers. So I feel like I'm home and among my people. But again, my name is Christy Norris. And as Dr. Waters said, I'm coming to you from Carolina K-12, which I directed for about 12 years and designed professional development and curriculum for teachers in all 100 counties of the state in history and the humanities. Prior to that, in the job that will keep you the most humble, I taught 8th grade North Carolina history in Durham Public Schools for many years. In fact, you'll see my former students there when they were acting out scenes of what they think happened to the lost colony. I don't even want to think about how old those kids are now, because that would age me to the point that would be very depressing. But that's all to say, I really live and breathe and speak the language of education. This is very much mission-based work for me. So I was really excited to come on board the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, as Dr. Waters said, to help facilitate the department's Learning Happens Here initiative, which really places a priority on engaged, experiential, hands-on learning that is accessible regardless of your income, regardless of your geography, regardless of any barriers in each region of the state. And so whether it's through visiting one of our more than 100 plus sites, all of which I'm trying to meet and get the lay of the land of as quickly as I can, or you attend a teacher workshop, or you access an online lesson plan, I really view this initiative as a way to open up the doors of the department more even than they already are, wide open to teachers and students in every county of the state. I think that, we are in a time when teachers are feeling the most devalued and deprofessionalized than I have ever seen in my 20 plus career in education, especially those teaching history. And there are many different reasons for that. And so I think the timing of this initiative and the work that you all are doing is so critical and can really make such a positive difference and positive impact in teaching and learning. The fact is, the more that we can support teachers, the happier they will be. Happy teachers equal happy students. And so it's really an important investment that can pay dividends around the state. And so what does that actually look like? I view part of my job is really just making sure we showcase the extensive and amazing educational and outreach work that's already happening in the department. I want our department and the wealth of diverse resources here, including everything that you all are doing, to be the first stop for teachers when they are looking for quality support, when they are looking for innovative resources. There is so much out there for public education, Not all of it is great. And so it can be really hard to get the attention of practicing teachers. And I want to make sure that I can use this role to really spotlight what is already happening, while also fostering even more collaboration across different entities throughout the department, across disciplines. This is how we can get to interdisciplinary learning experiences for teachers and students that are more holistic. I think that's good for those of us in the department as educators, and also really great for connecting students to high quality interdisciplinary experiences that are relevant, that are local, that are place-based, that are really meaningful for them. And so I will say, you'll hear me talk about K-12 teachers a lot, partially because yes, I was a teacher, and so I'm very biased to supporting teachers, but also that's not to diminish the outreach work that we're doing directly to students, hosting field trips and things like that. That's just because the way I see it, if we reach one teacher, each teacher that we reach is then working with hundreds of students every single school year that we can keep them in the classroom. And so I think that's a really incredible investment that we can make. And so I want to do as much as I can to support our state's K-12 teaching professionals in the work that I'm doing. And so I'm just going to show you two quick examples, and then I'll stop, because if you get me talking about K-12 education, I'll keep you here until 2 o'clock this afternoon. But you are looking at one example. This is one of the most amazing groups of North Carolina educators I've ever worked with. These are the 2024 America 250 NC Teaching Fellows. This is a program that has been absolutely amazing to dream about, to create, to plan, along with Sarah Kuntz and her A250 team. Also with the amazing staff site directors of North Carolina Historic Sites. Michelle Lanier, I think, is on. And she and her team have literally just, again, opened their doors to their sites wide open to these teachers. But this is a program that basically provides a fellowship model instead of just a one-off workshop. The idea being that teachers get to have a more sustained professional pathway to explore in really experiential, hands-on way the rich history of our state. So this has been 8 months where teachers have really just done a deep dive into exploring the concept of freedom all around the state. And so what's great about these teachers, their disciplines aren't listed here, but these aren't all just history teachers. We have history teachers, we have science teachers, we have English language arts teachers. We even have a theater teacher there in the mix. And so they have formed this amazing cohort to engage in this history of freedom around the state. We've visited tons of different historic sites and sites. We have looked at everything from the role of Black soldiers in the American Revolution to, we visited Sarah Key's art mural when we were in historic Halifax for the amazing 2 days this April. We have looked, we'll be going to Tryon Palace, where we're going to be looking at United States colored troops, the regulator movement. You know, freedom is such a broad topic, and there's such deep, rich history in this state. And so we've really just worked to throw our arms around all of that and not just limit this to a study of 1776. The other thing I'll point out is you'll see these fellows are from each region of the state, which I think is very important. We have to make sure that we aren't just serving teachers in urban areas or rural areas, that we're not just serving teachers in the big cities, you know, in just Raleigh, so to speak. So these teachers are so diverse in the areas that they come from. And, you know, again, because we are really pushing cross-disciplinary learning, we're strategically chosen to not just be regionally diverse, but diverse in disciplines. Diverse, we have 2 first-year teachers, bless their hearts. I've tried to get the other teachers not to scare them, because we also have some 30-year teachers, but it's really been an amazing cohort for them to form a web of support of each other. They're sharing ideas and talking a lot, even beyond our meetings. So that's been really incredible. And the other thing that they do that's really great, again, as experts from the fields themselves, is advise DNCR site and offer feedback on the sites that they visit about their experience there. And so what you see here is the teachers in historic Bath. This was just 2 weeks ago. The site director of Historic Bath, Laura Rogers, is I've nicknamed her the Queen of Bath. She's absolutely amazing in the way that she opened up her entire site to the teachers again. And I'm so thankful to she and Michelle and all of Historic Sites for really just diving into this program. But the teachers had an amazing day. They got to tour all of the buildings with Laura in kind of behind the scenes ways. They got to participate in a live archaeological dig, which you see there, with Dr. Charles Ewan and his students at the Phelps Archaeology Lab. And they're digging the Bonner House, which was thought, I'm sure all of you are history nerds like me, so you know that's where John Lawson's residence is thought to have been. Matt, the teacher you see there on the side, has discovered a 1700s, they said, we think that's a nail from the late 1700s. And it was like he found a pot of gold. He said that we literally made his dream come true that day by letting him play a live Indiana Jones in the field. So, and I think the impact of this type of program is really tremendous, not only in providing these great chances to deepen teacher content knowledge in North Carolina history and culture and heritage, but also, again, allowing them to kind of tap into this professional network of support, both with each other and with DNCR staff. And so I just love this comment. A fellow said, I have felt so discouraged and isolated lately. There's so much stacked against us, but this fellowship and engaging with these amazing professionals from around the state has rekindled my excitement for bringing history alive for my students. We can't, you can't get better than that, I feel like. And lastly, really quick, one last example, because it's where I'm headed. So actually, I am going to get to go into the coastal field this weekend, is the Carolina Voices. It's a 3-day teacher retreat that we offer for 40 teachers from all around the state. We're taking them to Beaufort, one of my favorite places, not just in North Carolina, but in the world. And I think this program really exemplifies the way partnerships can help us also build an even stronger web of support for teachers. I know several of you actually, I think, are members of the North Caroliniana Society, who funds this retreat in its entirety. And we just plan it. And, teachers get to experience literally 3 days of hands-on history, heritage, and culture. We are touring downtown Beaufort on a double-decker historical bus. They're getting behind-the-scenes treatment at the Maritime Museum in Bonehenge. I'm really appreciative. I think Maria is on, who helped us arrange that. They're spending a day out on Cape Lookout with the Core Sound Museum. We're going to have discussions and performances. If any of you know the amazing gospel singer Mary D. Williams is going to perform freedom songs. But through all of this, I think even more important than the content knowledge that they get is that we fill them up with constant appreciation and inspiration and rejuvenation, with constant affirmation and reminders that they are valued professionals, that we are here supporting them, that what they do matters, that teaching a full and comprehensive and hopeful history matters. And so at the end of it all, the gratitude from the teachers is really overwhelming. This is a teacher, we did this last year as well. He said, I'm on my 31st year. Naturally, retirement is on my mind, but this experience has reminded me why I became a teacher and why I will continue to teach. Thank you for reminding me what my life's calling has been and will continue to be. And so this is what I see Learning Happens Here is, that we want to support teachers. We support students by supporting teachers. We continue high quality education and outreach, and really work to open up our doors to lift up and appreciate and support teachers in all 100 counties of the state in a time when, again, I'll say, I think they need it now more than ever. So I'm going to stop because, again, Darren knows I could keep going all afternoon, but I know you guys have a robust agenda. So I appreciate you having me. It was really great to meet you, and please reach out, if you ever want to dream about how to support teachers.
Thank you so much, Christy. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Waters. I had one, if I could, Chairman Ruffin.
Of course.
I just want to thank Dr. Waters and Ms. Norris for the presentation here. I think that dovetails nicely with our Chair Ruffin's vision of what the commissioners can do to support the staff and the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources in promoting education to the public and awareness, and also to get the school children out into the field to see what we have to offer. So very excited about that. I think it's well worth the wait. Parker is going to send out a doodle poll. We're trying to see if there's a couple of weeks in July when we could all meet in Raleigh in person. So be alert for that, and look forward to seeing you all in person next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Reynolds, for your initiative on this, and I am incredibly impressed, Ms. Norris, over your presentation. I think it's one of the things we had a discussion about in the early stages of this initiative was that we knew there was a lot going on. We were kind of focused as commissioners on the kind of the layman's perspective of the degradation of history and its effect, frankly, toxic effect on our society. But what we knew was going on but need more reassurance of is exactly what you just presented to us, and how we embrace that and encourage that. Don't reinvent the wheel, but do more that we can as a commission to further enhance and to focus on that and give more a spotlight on it and profile for it. And I do want to reiterate, and I know this is key to Sarah Kuntz, is that so much of this aspiration, at least for me personally, and I think for a lot of the commissioners, is let's build as much as we humanly can around America 250. There's just an inherent spirit that comes with, back in again, we all remember the bicentennial, and we've got to capitalize on that kind of, frankly, hopefully respite from the nature of our current discourse politically and publicly, and particularly to make sure that we're doing it in every step of the way to support more and more and more and more awareness and teaching. And it was alluded to earlier in the agenda about the importance of connecting to children. Dr. Denard's comment about the president's order, including girls, that's where a lot of the true interest in the lifetime is really generated, is at the children level and the student level. So again, very uplifting, and thank you so much for what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And we all look forward to Commissioner Reynolds' committee and their work to supplement all these larger thoughts that we've been having. So again, thank you so much for that. I would, as we're beginning to close out the agenda, we do have, as you know, this is the so-called off quarter for having more formalized and more detailed division directors reports. But I certainly don't want in any way to stifle significant news or maybe headliners out of each division. But I'm going to kind of push Michelle Lanier, who again is director of the North Carolina Division of State Historic Sites, a little bit to the front of the class today. I think you've got some kind of significant news that we'd like to hear about, right?
Yes, indeed. We've made history at the Division of Historic Sites. We are celebrating the phenomenal news that the Duke Endowment made a gift of $2.5 million for the updates to the exhibits at Duke Homestead State Historic Site, as well as some ongoing preservation needs that they want to create an endowment for. It's not our first time attaining 2.5 million, but it is our first time attaining 2.5 million from a private, as a private gift. And so I want to, on the record, thank Dr. Darren Waters for planting the seed and tilling the ground for this moment to happen. He serves on the Fine Arts Committee for the Executive Mansion with the chair of the Duke Endowment, Charlie Lucas, who is a Duke descendant. A conversation was had around how important it would be for the centennial of the Duke Endowment commemoration to include a transformative gift to Duke Homestead. Dr. Waters shared that information with our team, and we worked for 2 years with the Duke Endowment to get them what they need, the data they needed, the interface time that they needed with our team. And so we are still flying high from this news. Very, very excited about making history in this way.
Mr. Chair, I'll just thank Michelle and her team. They did a remarkable job of just continuing to carry that ball for 2 years. So Michelle, Michelle, you know, she had done a lot of work to till this ground before. And so Michelle, thank you for what you do for the department and for the state and for state historic sites. But I definitely want to take the moment to recognize that you and your team for all the hard work that you do.
Thank you so much. I need to thank Julie Herseg, who is the site manager at Duke Homestead, Jennifer Farley, who is the Piedmont Regional former site manager at Duke Homestead, and of course, Kimberly Kandros, who works with us on grants, and Chuck LeCount, Charles LeCount, who is our deputy director. We all worked very hard on this, but thank you for opening the door, Dr. Waters.
Great. Well, I think we've been provided about a dozen pages of some work that the division heads have done. But again, I want to open this up for anything that is a headliner or anything that any of the other division heads would like to share with us, or Dr. Waters, you might want to direct some of that. But certainly, again, we always look forward to the so-called, I guess you say it bi-quarterly, where we meet in person and then have direct and more extensive detailed reports from the division directors, but certainly don't hesitate to share any kind of headliner.
And I certainly will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, Sarah and Ramona, and we have Maria Van is standing in today. You've met Maria. She's the Deputy Director of the North Carolina Division of State Museums, and she works with Brad Wilson, who is our interim director, and Brad is traveling right now, so she's standing in for him. But I want to thank them for being on the call. I also want to take to publicly recognize them for the hard work that they do every single day to preserve and take care of the culture and the history of the state. I mean, it is a rich and important service to the state of North Carolina. And I do hope that the citizens of the state really recognize the important work that they do on a daily basis. So I want to thank them. I mean, it's just great to work with each of them as a team. So I will just say, if they want, Sarah, you or Ramona or Maria, if you want to just take a couple minutes, and if there's anything that you want to highlight for the commission, by all means, please feel free to do that.
I would like to highlight a few America 250 things, and this is based, let me preface this by an apology from me. I could not write one more report, get anything ready in time. So I didn't include anything America 250 in my report, but we're humming along. I just wanted to give you guys some updates on where we're at on a few things and answer any questions, because we've had a lot of significant activity in the last few months, including a successful launch at Halifax on Halifax Resolves Day. That was a lot of fun. Saw some of you there. So that was a great success. It was a good opportunity to include the Freedom Fellows and all that activity as well. So they've really gotten into a lot of our America 250 programs and materials, but just a few highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I think I've shared with you all that we have a planned series of 4 children's books coming out. That first one is due to come in October. We just got cover art today, so it's very exciting. It's called Within Our Power, and it's about the Edenton Tea Party women and their role in political activism. So that's the first of 4 books, and that should be ready. We're paying extra to have some advanced copies drop shipped so we can have them at the Edenton 250th this fall. So that's moving along well. And just looking forward to continuing some things we've been doing, including the another class of Freedom Fellows, continuing to work with Dr. Sonny Kelly, who's developed a one-man performance about African-American veterans in North Carolina across a timeline, and working with him in the next year to shorten that for a K-12 audience so it can be contained in like a classroom setting. But he has his full show available for performance now, and it's gotten a lot of very positive reviews. So we're very excited to continue working with him. I want to thank Michelle and her staff for continuing to support the When Are We Us thematic framework. They've got a whole calendar for 3 years of great events across historic sites that are related to explorations of freedom across different time periods, our rights, the evolution of rights and things like that. So I encourage you to pay attention to our calendar because they've really done a lot of work. She has a whole subcommittee working specifically on When Are We Us related events. So that really, I think, enhances what the department is developing. We're looking forward to some, like I said, the Edenton Tea Party's coming up. The anniversary of the first provincial Congress will be in New Bern. That's the first time that what's now the General Assembly met in defiance of the governor. So we'll kind of mark that recognition at Tryon Palace. We're looking forward to that. And then we're starting to talk to groups that are developing bigger regional plans. So for example, the 6 southeastern counties are coming together to plan something they're calling the First and Freedom Festival around February of 2026 that will coincide with the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge. And that's going to be more than just history. They're looping in groups that have art and culture related activities to be a part of that festival. So we're really looking forward to helping support that. And that should be a great regional opportunity. We're also talking to national groups on other ways we can collaborate. So the commissions from Wisconsin and Virginia are kind of leading a charge for a April of 2025 event they're calling the Two Lanterns Festival, and they're basing this on the famous One If by Land, Two If by Sea, Paul Revere, lanterns in the Boston area, but not specifically around the history of that event or like we're going to take up arms. They're casting this more along the lines of a hopeful, forward-looking opportunity for Americans to come together and think about the future. So they're calling it the Two Lantern Festival. So we'll have more information about that this summer. They're creating a toolkit around that. And there's some other great initiatives going on that are related to kind of bringing the country together, including Pennsylvania is leading the charge with the Great American Cleanup to have a national day of cleanup and civic participation in those sorts of events. So we're getting more information on opportunities like that as well. But a little bit about our local grants. We just closed our first round of local grants. So the General Assembly appropriated $2.1 million in the biennial budget for 2 types of grants. One chunk was for official county committees, and they have to be the officially recognized county committee for the commemoration. And the other chunk was open to nonprofits or any arm of a local government office to apply for grants to support programming, activities, promotion of things related to America 250th. So we received 71 grants. I think the majority of them came in the last 24 hours before the deadline closed. We got slammed. So we've spent a lot of time reading these grants very carefully. We got 22 from counties, 49 from nonprofits and other local government offices. We've accepted the county grants and 28 of the nonprofit grants, and we're working with them to announce that now. And we will be opening up grant applications for the second round sometime in August. And it's my intent to ask the General Assembly again for more money for that in the next biennium because they've been very popular. We could have given away all of our money in this cycle if we had the enough grant opportunities. But for the most part, they were really great. We've tabled a few to look at some of the history behind it, but a lot of them were really good. We had some public art activities. We have teacher training in there. We have a lot of field trip support, really diverse set of programming, a lot of really creative ideas. One of our counties proposed a school-aged kid cooking contest to feature historic recipes and things. So just a real variety of great activities. So that was really heartening to see the creativity in the grants. So as you're out and about in your area and you are hopefully talking up America 250, encourage your local cultural heritage institutions. We had grants from libraries, we had grants from local museums. All those sorts of groups are going to be eligible to apply as long as they're a nonprofit or connected with your local government offices. And local government means county or municipal. So we're more than happy to see that grant money go out the door. That's my goal, is to get it all out the door eventually. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the local grant program or anything else America 250. That was probably more time than you wanted, but got a lot going on with the
Thank you,
commemoration.
Sarah. Mr. Chair.
No, any other comments from any other division? Thank you very much, Sarah. But
Sure, I can add just a few things very briefly. As you may have seen from a press release, the Museum of History is working to move our entire collection as well as our staff out of the building, as we are going to have a reimagining and transformation of our space over the next 2 to 3 years. So we're very excited and hard at work, especially John Campbell and his team there, moving the collection, deinstalling our exhibits. As of June 3rd, our third floor exhibits were closed to the public, and we are deinstalling all the objects out of those exhibits as we speak. And we have a proposed date to close the building on October 7th to the public of 2024, when we'll continue on deinstalling and moving and packing our collection and all the folks here. So a lot happening at the Museum of History. It is a wonderful time for us to really take a full assessment of our collection as well, which is important for this commission, because we are literally going to be placing our hands on every single object that we have here. So it's going to be a great time for us to make a good assessment. We're also working internally on our projected plans for programming to continue it at MOH as a museum without walls over the next few years. And we have some great and creative ideas stirring up with our staff, and we'll be sharing those along the way with you. We'll also be taking on a statewide community engagement process with Brocade Studios. So we are going to be able to hear from people throughout the state what stories are important to be told, that they want to hear about their state's history. And I think there is going to be a lot of information gathering that we'll share throughout the department and with others as we get feedback and input from folks across the state. I also do want to just send out some great kudos to all the folks down at the Graveyard of the Atlantic Museum. As you can see in the report, we opened to the public. It has been the new museum reimagined down there has been just a welcome addition to that local community, but of course the tourist community as well. It is, if you haven't been there, please take the long drive, as I always say, to the end of the earth to see that museum, because it is fabulous what they've done down there. In the first 2 days alone, we saw just under 2,000 visitors in and out the door. We're excited that that's finally, after several years, open to the public. And then the last thing I'll just touch on briefly is that we don't have an exact date yet, but we'll have more reporting for you probably at the next meeting, is that the Tobacco Farm Life Museum in Kenly will also be coming under our fold at the state as a state museum. And I'll give you more information on that, or Brad Wilson will at the next meeting. But some big projects going on in our division.
Thank you,
Maria,
Maria.
this is David Ruffin. Is there any likelihood of the reopening of the flagship museum, Museum of History, at or near the July 4th, 2026? Or is that, when you said 2 to 3 years, that likely just means it may go beyond that, right?
It likely will go beyond that because of the bit of construction and install that has to happen. But it doesn't mean that MOH won't be actively involved in 250 as well as the entire of the Division of State.
Of course. And maybe we can have some, so to speak, tailwind that comes off the good vibes of that day to formally reopen our flagship museum. That'll be something to look forward to.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just add that what has been good with the leadership team at the museum and I would say within the division, is they're being very intentional about how they partner with the regional museums
Right.
as well during this period. And that was something that, you know, I think Maria would agree, and I know the secretary would, that we needed to really put our finger on and try to really push that button a little bit more intentionally than we have. So I want to just tip my hat of appreciation to them for that work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, because I think in even business, we see this quite frequently, is the toxic effect of siloing interests that become maybe competing in an unintentional way. But this is a time now for the other museums to finally, at some point, take up a little bit of the slack around the necessary renovation of the history museum. Yep.
Ramona, anything you want to add?
Sure. Thank you. And I'm sorry to share this. This is just an update as of this morning. We received a synopsis from our legislative liaison, Dean Eatman, about our legislative asks. And I will say, for our division, I don't believe that our asks for some additional staff capacity were included in the House budget. And perhaps Dr. Waters can speak more, because several of us had asked for things. So I'm hopeful that that could be reconsidered in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ramona, for mentioning that. And Mr. Chair, I know that the next item was my report, but you've heard from the division director, so there's not a lot that I'll add here, other than to speak to what Ramona said about the budget. The House budget came out yesterday. The governor had included many of the things that we had asked for, especially for Ramona's team. I mean, the Office of State Archaeology and SHPO, I think, are, these are very especially SHPO is very front facing, and the public activity and work that they do is so important around the state. And it serves as, Ramona, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way I see it, as a real economic driver for the state as well. Dr. Denard knows, and as does Dr. Johnson, and I would say Commissioner Snowden, who is on the committee that oversees a lot that we do with regard to the National Registry, that we're trying to be intentional about incorporating communities that have been rather underrepresented in that process. And because of that, that means that the work of that team is going to increase, the demand on that team is going to increase, and there's a real need for capacity there. And so we appreciate the fact that the governor has recognized that. We're hoping that there'll still be a way that something will end up in the budget, the final budget that comes out of the legislature. But right now, as far as the House budget was concerned, those asks were not included. So we'll wait to see what happens with the Senate budget and keep you updated. But that's a place where I think your help is, you all can be helpful in advocating for some of those needs. So I'll just say that, Ramona, if there's anything that I missed there, by all means, please jump in.
I appreciate that, Dr. Waters. And I think all of you know, on the commission, our division is largely a service-oriented division. Without venues, the whole state is our venue, so to speak. So we need people to help people. So that's again very important. It's a very personal one-on-one assistance that we give oftentimes, and I think our constituents are expecting that. We have more constituents than ever, all of us combined. So we appreciate everyone's attention to that issue.
And I personally have referred someone to Ramona that was very, very appreciative over some advice on historic registry implications on purchasing and development and so forth. And they couldn't have been more complimentary, could not have been. But I just need to say this: for all the time and effort we spend on this conceptual desire to promote history, we can't do anything without resources. If you don't have the resources to implement, the talk becomes rather cheap. So I just feel very strongly about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so the only thing that I'll add as far as a report from me is concerned is just to thank you all for your commitment to the work of this commission. Some of you we have contact with quite often. I do want to recognize Dr. Denard. Dr. Denard retired from his professorate, I guess has it been 3 years now, Dr. Denard?
Yes.
Yes, but he has not retired. He has stayed very active, and especially with us. And I'll be leaving when this meeting is over to go down to Tryon Palace to meet with the U.S. Colored Troops there, the team that is involved with that group there. I'll be meeting with them today. Thankful for the department. The department, through the secretary, has made a strong commitment to that group to see to it that they get some funding that they really needed. So I'll be taking that message down there today. But I want to just recognize Dr. Denard because he's done a lot of work to bring both that group and other groups with Tryon Palace and other places around the state along over the course of many years. So we're really building upon work that he has been doing for a long time. But Dr. Denard, I didn't want to miss this opportunity to thank you for the work that you have done and your continued commitment to that work.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely, Dr. Denard. We join in that sense of appreciation. Thank you so much, Dr. Waters, and for again, it can't be said enough how much you and your entire staff are appreciated by this commission and the work you do. It's not a single meeting we go through that we're not wowed and impressed over that, and particularly if we're facing resource challenges. That's very, very a serious part of what we like to say as a commission under Noah's committee that we need to maybe refocus a little bit of attention on. So I then move on to other business. Having heard none that to my knowledge of anyone's suggestion, is there any need to discuss any other matters? Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to draw attention to the commission to the email that Parker sent out, and just it was basically a notification about archaeology and the state of archaeology that we need to pay attention to. And it wasn't to be partisan, but that our archaeological resources in the state are critical. And they don't just interpret what's going on in our state, but they have implications nationally. And so there is a particular bill that's going through that I just would ask the commission to look at and read and take notice of it and do as you're moved to do. I think I also wanted to offer public support for the statements made by Chris Southerly as our lead archaeologist, that there are ways in which development and archaeology can work together, and that we're about preserving not just the history, but promoting and talking about the ways in which there's some artifacts that we're continuing to uncover. And that's the expectation of archaeology, is that through time, they're going to uncover ways, materials that help explain aspects of our society. And you don't fully excavate a site because there's materials that can be left in the site for later archaeologists to investigate with other kinds of tools and matters. And so I just wanted to, as new business, draw attention to that email that went out and kind of explain why it is that I asked Parker to put it on our agenda. And I think in light of America 250, we need to be able to understand ourselves and what happened in our far past and the peoples who were here. There's some invaluable thousands and thousands of year old materials that are important to not just us, but to particular parts of our constituency that need not to be destroyed or to be buried, but to be able to be seen, and not to always go into a museum, but to be a part of the cultural materials of the peoples most attached to it. So that
Well,
was all I wanted to draw
thank-
attention to. And again, in light of our kids love, I love that part where the teacher said, "Ah, he found a nail." This is something as simple as a shard of pottery or a nail or a piece of cloth can give us insight, and that's all. The more we know, the better we are.
Well said. Thank you so much, Commissioner Johnson. Okay, well, I will, the chair announcements are really only limited to the fact that I look forward to seeing you all in person on September the 17th in Raleigh. And I think Dr. Waters has planning, if I may go ahead and say this, maybe I'm putting some pressure on you, sir, but is that we will hopefully have our tour of other aspects of the staff and not just necessarily hear it from an academic perspective around what the reports are. I remember the first, one of the first things that happened when I was made chair is Kevin Cherry graciously provided me almost a half or 3/4 of a day tour of the various aspects of the department that relates at some way, form, or the other to our work as the Historical Commission. And an adjunct to that is very shortly thereafter, he scheduled some incredible quality time with Commissioner Sam Dixon in Edenton, and which is just an incredible, area of just overwhelming history that just on a variety of fronts. And the degree to which that made an impression on me as the beginning to be chair of this commission was invaluable. And I would particularly think that those of you that are relatively new the last few years on the commission would certainly benefit from that kind of in-person tour. And graciously thank Dr. Waters for offering to organize that. It probably will mean a little more of a time commitment that we have to allocate for our meeting in Raleigh in September, but I just want to speak for the entire commission. I think we were all looking forward to that.
Look forward to doing that. And I can tell you that Sarah gives a mean tour.
I have 4 this week if anyone's in town and want to join in. I think I'm seeing every legal intern in the state government.
And if anybody wants to come in, tours are always.
Yes. I mean, he talk about a master host. This gentleman, Sambo Dixon, is indeed that, undoubtedly. So again, I thank you all very, very much for your participation, your contributions today, and for your actions. And if without any other comments or issues, then I am open to hear a motion for adjournment.
I make the motion that we adjourn.
Dr. Denard moves. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Ms. Groom has seconded. So all in favor for the last roll call today. Mr. Clark. A lot of people are muted.
Aye.
Ms. Condell.
Aye.
Dr. Denard.
Aye.
Mr. Dixon.
Aye.
Ms. Groom.
Aye.
Dr. Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Both of me say aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Snowden.
Aye.
And David Ruffin, aye. So stay safe and enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Thank you.